Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Andrew Flitcroft, editor of Trout Salmon magazine, and I'm on the River Coquet with Howard Croston, who's the global development manager for Hardy fishing rods and tackle. Hello, Howard.
Andrew, how are you?
I could see you have a bit of a knack with a fishing rod.
Well, sometimes. Only on good days.
It looks very good indeed. I notice you've got a rod here which has just got stickers on. So is that a prototype or what
yeah, so this is basically a new development prototype, and this is typically the stage in which I will first get a rod out of the factory.
Right.
After we've done all the initial sort of development work and counter sampling against some of our competitors, and
yes, yeah,
you know, any work we're doing with new materials, I'll send a design off to the factory.
Right.
And then, depending on how many designs I send at the same time, I'll get samples back.
Right. Okay. And when you design a rod, what process do you go through in terms of when you're picking? Do you pick who you are choosing, a type of fishing, or who you're choosing a rod for, making a rod for? How do you work out what to make? Because there must be so many variables.
Yeah, I mean there is. It's a huge thing. I mean the thing you've got to keep in mind is fly fishing is a hugely personal subject. You know, what's perfect for one angler is not going to be perfect for the next. So really, the place where we start is we look at what it's going to be used for first of all, right? So there's certain kinds of things that certain rods must be able to do well.
And what are they?
Well, I mean, let's say for argument's sake, if you're saltwater fly fishing, the requirements for that rod are really very different from what you would need in the small still water.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, if we're talking about developing a saltwater product, the first thing that I'm sort of thinking normally is, well, the first thing is the composite has got to be particularly strong. Well, you know, all graphite rods strong, but when you talk about something you're developing for saltwater, you've got to turn that durability level up a few notches.
Yes, yeah.
You know, so we have to sort of keep in mind that aspect of it. And then really from there on in, you start to dig into what are the key performance characteristics for that kind of fishing. And overlaid on top of all of that, you've then got to think, well, what am I actually trying to achieve with the end product? Do I want to make it easier for that consumer to use, that angler?
Yes, yeah.
Or do I want to, you know, make it lighter? You know, what are we trying to achieve with the end goal?
And so are you aiming at a mass market, or are things turning into more of a specialist market nowadays? I
think there's always been a high degree of specialisation in fly tackle, because if you think about what you're doing with a really, really very lightweight piece of graphite, these things really now have got to be tuned to quite a high degree to some of the more modern methods that we're using.
Yes.
You know, so even and I mentioned saltwater, even in saltwater, everything's getting lighter and more delicate in terms of presentation, and you know, you've still got to have the strength behind it. Yeah. But they're becoming increasingly specialised tools.
That's because methods are changing all the time as well.
Yeah, everything's developing and everything's becoming. You know, I mean, let's be honest. As fishing becomes more pressured in some ways, there's more people fishing in a lot of cases.
Yes.
You know, tactics and approaches have got to become ever more refined. You know?
So that's like the, you know, French leader type methods, or even when you're fishing switch rods for, you know, lighter outfits for salmon, they're all quite new, aren't they?
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, there's those newer, if you like, newer configurations. There's nothing really new in fishing. No. You know, we all sort of know that. But some of those newer configurations and newer techniques sort of start to come to the fore. The equipment has got to keep pace with that.
Yes.
You know, and that's why I believe that you've really got to, you know, from a rod development and design standpoint, you have to fish. You know, you have to be a fisherman.
Yes.
And have a large degree of experience in different kinds of fishing to do it right.
Yeah. So how many times, for example, with this rod here, would you go out and test it, or for what length of time would you test that just continually until you're happy with it?
Yeah, it's quite. It is. I'll be honest. It is quite an involved process. So basically, the very first samples that I will get will be action samples to a design. So I'll send the design. I'll get the action samples back.
Yes.
I'll do an initial sort, and quite often I'll do A, B, and C versions of every line size. So you can imagine when some of the rod ranges we've got like 30 models in them. I spend an awful lot of time casting fly rods.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll do an initial sort, and I will narrow that down to candidate blanks, which I think are going to hit what I want.
Yeah.
I'll then send those out to a few people I've put a lot of trust in. You know, fellow anglers who I've got a good long-term relationship with in different kinds of fishing.
Yeah.
I'll get their feedback. I then might make some modifications based on what they tell me.
Yes.
Because you know, as much fishing as I do, I can't be an expert at everything. It's impossible. So I'll sort of round all that feedback out, and then I'll typically put another design tweak to the factory. I'll get another set of samples back. I'll check those against the first ones, and it's an iterative process. And you know, sometimes the reality of it is we may be 9 or 10 prototypes in on some line sizes, and 2 prototypes in on another before you know we've got the action dialed in.
And once you've got the action dialed in, you've then got to make it look different to what came out before. And,
well, there's a lot goes on after that. I mean, once that initial action work's done, we do a lot of lab qualification. So the product then goes to a lab that we own. It's our lab, where we do a lot of brake tests, strength testing, critical curve testing, all sorts of things like that. Then after that, when we've applied cosmetics and made the rod look nice, it goes back in there and goes through UV testing, salt spray testing, all sorts of different parameters that they've got to pass before they go on the market.
Yeah, very good. Well, Howard, thank you very much for that. It's fascinating to talk about how rods are sort of developed. I know we haven't had much time, but obviously readers will be able to read the interview with you in the next magazine, next Trout and Salmon magazine. Yeah. And you just carry on and do a bit of fishing. And get as a trout.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. No pressure then, Andrew.
No pressure. World champion and all that.
Thanks.